Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on our webinar on Melbourne property turnaround. Why this is the best time to invest. Firstly, may I share? Benham Reeves is a UK property company. We have 65 years of experience, 21 London branches and 11 international offices, including where Melvin is from, Malaysia, and myself from Hong Kong. This evening, we have invited Melvin Koh from our Malaysia office to share his insight on Melbourne property market. Hi, Melvin. Good to see you.
Hi, Shireen. Yes, great to be here. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I think we have attendees from Thailand, Indonesia, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and maybe Singapore as well. So I'd like to jump straight into it. So allow me to introduce myself. I'm Melvin. I head the business of Benham Reeves in Malaysia. I've been involved in international property since 2008. I started with properties in Australia. That is why I'm doing the talk today. And I've worked extensively across with many Australian developers, namely Lendlease, Mirvac, Meriton. These are the big names in Australia. So let's get into it and let's see where is Melbourne at today, where is Sydney at today, and of course we'll also be showing you some interesting properties as well. Next, please. In the agenda today, we'll look at what's the recent updates on the policies and the budget announcements of the Australian property market. I will cover it as we go along. And of course, we'll look at where Melbourne is sitting at. We are focusing primarily on Melbourne today. There are some questions comparing Melbourne and Sydney. I will cover that shortly. And of course, we will look at landed homes versus apartments. There are some questions on that as well. And market opportunities to watch and what's next for Australia and particularly Melbourne. Next, please. So why Melbourne? I think particularly for Southeast Asian people who live in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of nostalgia. Just like UK, it is a Commonwealth country, so it has a lot of appeal, primarily with Malaysians, Singaporeans, as well as now recently Thai and Indonesians as well. A lot of people are going there for ultimately their family, their children's education, and if they want a good quality of life. Interesting fact is that you're looking at 300,000 annual migrants into Australia these days, versus a local population growth of about over 100 over 1,000. So an annual growth of about 400 over 1,000 people in Australia. But the net migration is what drives the economy, is what drives the employment. And like I said, ultimately, they're going there for lifestyle, for work-life balance, and a good quality of life as well. And this has always been the appeal of Australia. Next, please. So Melbourne has always been the preferred city. Of course, you have Sydney and Brisbane. But in terms of being an education hub, you have Melbourne U, which is still ranked #1 in Australia. You have Monash University, you have RMIT. But what is the true appeal of Melbourne is that it has the elite secondary education like Geelong Grammar, Melbourne Grammar, the Presbyterian Girls' School in Burwood, Melbourne. So all these boarding schools coupled with the universities attracts a lot of people around the world. And of course, the biggest migration wave now are particularly individuals from China, India, and Southeast Asia as well. As I shared with you earlier, you're looking at 300 over 1,000 migrants annually from all over the world. Next, please. And in terms of lifestyle, it has always been the world's most livable cultural capital instead to live, work, and play for the arts, for the culture, for events. Melbourne has it all. It has always been the world's best city to live in since 2008, since as far as I can remember. And of course, the real appeal of living in Melbourne, living in Australia, is nature at doorstep. You have mountain biking, you can walk, you have going to the walkabout in the woods. So a lot of this outdoor and nature and outdoor lifestyle is a big appeal for migrants to live and work and play in Melbourne, Australia. Next, please. So now we jump into in terms of the demographic, which I've shared with you earlier. You're looking at 300,000 annual migrants, like I said, 100 over 1,000 local population growth. of course, population growth is expected to grow 1.5% annually. But now what Melbourne, or particularly Australia, is facing is a crisis of housing, right? They need at least 70 to 90,000 housing annually to cover these new migrants coming in. But because of COVID, because of the cost of living, because of material rises, of course, these days you have the war and everything has affected supply, the global supply chain. What you are seeing, if you Google and look at the builders, what's been happening in Australia now is that they can't build enough or on time. Similarly, with the UK, Melbourne is also facing the same situation as well. So what you're going to see is that there's lack of supply and rents rising significantly. Next, please. In terms of price per square foot, in terms of value, and why, in terms of the policy shifts that is so pro locals, for example, in Australia, you as a foreigner, and I'm sure many foreigners are here today or first-time buyers, you can only buy off-the-plan properties. You cannot buy subsale. You can buy subsale if you're a citizen or you have a PR. But if you're a foreigner, you buy what we call an off-the-plan property. So what a lot of parents do is that they buy an off-the-plan property, they hope their children becomes a PR or a citizen, then they sell off the first property, take back the capital, and reinvest in probably a nice subsale, bigger property down in the suburbs. And that's been the cyclical investment strategy of many, many people who are investing in Australia. So if you look at price per square foot in terms of US dollars, yeah, it's about $1,000 per square foot in Melbourne compared to London, which is about 2,500, New York, Singapore, and of course, like where Shireen is from in Hong Kong, ultimately it's very, very expensive. And that's why you will see in this coming years, I believe there's still a push factor from these countries or from these cities to still go into Australia to buy a property there, to live and work there. But of course, if you were to select a property, you need to select properly because ultimately when you resell, it's the locals or those individuals who have PR who will be buying from you. So when buying in Australia, always think like an Australian in terms of your exit strategy. What would a local Australian want, right? That is the key question to ask yourself. Next, please. So there's a question comparing Melbourne and Sydney. I'm covering it here. Melbourne has always been priced more value or a little bit lower compared to Sydney. And if you look at the Melbourne market now, I wouldn't mince words. It's underperforming. It's at the bottom. It's also because of the policies of the interest rate hikes, which they have reduced. But then looking at the inflation rate, they might increase again. So, but they have kept it steady for now. Of course, the next rate announcement would be end of August, which is coming. So if you look at Melbourne, the median house price, these are for landed properties, is about £1 million to £1.2 million. And for apartments, it's always about £600,000. Sorry, not pounds, Australian dollars. Yeah, 1 million to 1.2 million Australian dollars. And in Sydney, you're looking at 1.3 to 1.8 Australian dollars. Why Sydney is always more expensive? Because it's harder to build. There are geographical challenges because you have the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Blue Mountain. And if you look at Sydney in the city, it's caught between these nice ocean views versus the mountains. So it's a geographical challenge. It is what it is. That's why buying in Sydney is always more expensive. But interestingly, if you look at Brisbane, and Brisbane has had a massive 5-year surge. Of course, you have Surfers Paradise, you have all these nice places there. So this is caused by interstate migration because you can say global weather changes. I don't know, Melbourne can get very cold. So a lot of interstate migration has gone into Brisbane because you have better weather, you have nicer beaches, right? And have a better quality of life. And of course, the cost of living is still not as expensive. And Perth always has its appeal because it's nearer to us and it shares the same time zone as probably Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. And Perth, you can still get nice big landed homes for about $1 million Australian dollars. Yeah. So these are the 4 different cities, but ultimately you can see that Sydney is always the most priciest and it always has been. Next, please. So this is just a graph showing you where each city is at, which I've covered just now. So Brisbane is at its peak, right? Driven by interstate migration. Then you have Sydney, and then of course Melbourne is bottoming out now. In terms of its sub-sale clearance rate in Melbourne, they call it a auction. That means when you sell the property, you put it on auction. It doesn't mean that the bank is auctioning it. It means that you're putting it in the secondary market, and how they sell it there is via auction. So how hot the market is, you always look at the auction rates. So the latest auction rates are about 50. It's 50%. So that means every 100 homes, 50 are sold. So it's not as hot compared to the previous years of 80%. So you can still get good value. It's perhaps a time to buy now if you're looking to live, to stay. You can get good deals. So this is one of the best times to buy, and that's why we are covering it now. And of course, Perth is at its peak now. Yeah. And of course, Melbourne or Victoria, you have the current stamp duty savings, which ends in October 2026. So if you want to get some stamp duty savings discount, it's a good time to look at it now. Next, please. So you're looking at an undersupply crisis, right? Which I've shared earlier. One thing about Melbourne is that in terms of rentability, it's highly rentable. You're looking at a vacancy rate of 1.4%. That means out of 100 homes, 1.4 homes are not rented out, right? You have a severe undersupply. You will see a decline in construction activity, right? Decrease year on year, and you will see that as of now, it's between 15 to 11%. So you don't have enough supply. Current activities are difficult. Just Google it, you will see a lot of builders are facing it tough. So it's important that you select the good developers, the sound developers, and ultimately developers that can deliver. But they are sprucing the economy, they are sprucing the market via the stamp duty savings, which ends in 2026. Next, please. So where to buy or what to buy in Melbourne, where performs best? Traditionally, if you were to look at Melbourne, and most of you know it very well, the eastern suburbs are always preferred. Of course, you have suburbs written here like Baldwin, Melbourne, Brighton, Glen Waverley, Toorak, or Burwood. These are areas which are highly sought after with beautiful landed homes. And this has always been the place to go to for many migrants who want a better standard of living. But of course, for young families who cannot afford the $1 million homes in these areas, there is the north and the west, which is upcoming. You have places west, which I'll share with you in Kingsville, nearby Docklands, or Preston or Brunswick as well. So these peripheral areas in the west might not be as pricey. It has good pricing. A similar home in the east would cost double, but you might get a landed home here for about 900,000 Australia dollars to 1 million Australia dollars. Next, please. So it's east versus west. East is always more expensive in Melbourne. So landed homes, if you go to the east, where the suburbs I shared just now, Toorak, Melbourne, Baldwin, all those areas, those are expensive, right? So new families, younger families these days are looking at the west. You're looking at 800,000 Australia dollars, yeah? And of course, not too near or not too far away from the CBD where you get the suburb life, but you can enter the city quite easily as well. Now, if you're looking for great capital growth, landed homes are always the preferred choice in Australia because, like I said, only the locals can buy from you in terms of the sub-sale market. So when you put it up in auction or when you put it up in the sub-sale market, majority of your buyers would be new PRs who have just been converted or turned into PRs as a foreigner, as a student, just become new PRs, young families who are coming in to live. So landed homes appeals to them. And if they like your product, they will pay probably a premium for it. And that's the beauty of having a landed home. Secondly, if you want a holiday home, you want high yields, you want something that is low entry, probably 400,000 or 500,000 Australian dollars safe, where you can rent it out and you can still use as a place for your child to study, to go to university, then apartments near the city or CBD are a better choice. So again, what is your preference, right? Next, please. So we have two products here today that we have specially selected. I think it is of value for money. Yeah. This is Kings Lane in South Kingsville. I'm just going to share with you briefly here. If you want to know more information, please reach out to your local Benham sales team. So this is a landed home, and if you look, where is it? Is the red square there, that tiny red square there. It's in Kingsville, but if you look, it's just right next to Melbourne City at your top right corner of your screen. It's near to Docklands. So you're within the CBD area with a waterside esplanade living, but you still get a landed home as well. Usually, if you're so near the city, usually people live in apartments. But this one is nice, it's there, and it's what we call a townhouse in terms of the Australian term. So next, please. So it's only 8 km from Melbourne CBD, which is nearby. It's not that far. And if you use the freeway, it's about 5 minutes. It's on the Spottiswoode train station, 5 minutes to the CBD as well. It is freehold, modern contemporary in design. Yeah, it's a double garage. So if you look at the capital growth rate of 5.2% over 10 years, that's the general rate of growth for landed property in Melbourne. So averagely, you're looking at about $1 million Australian dollars. If this property will be in the eastern suburbs, which you have seen in the map just now, it'll be about 2 million Australian dollars. So like I said, if you go into this one, you just go in for an entry price, yeah, and you ride it, you must have a long-term view. Then when you exit, the new young families will be the ones buying off from you. Next, please. The second one is an interesting apartment. It's in the east, so I'm sharing with you something in the east. Why we want something here, and if it's in the east, in the suburb, it's next to the station and it's highly rentable. So if you can see, it's near Monash University. It is near Chadstone Shopping Centre. For those of you who are not familiar, Chadstone is, of course, one of the largest shopping centres there. It's in the suburbs. And this development, interestingly enough, is right next to the station and only about, if I'm not mistaken, 12 kilometers to the CBD. Next, please. So, Murrumbeena Place in Melbourne. So this one is situated in a, like I said, it's a blue chip suburb because it's in the east. Yeah, it's right next to the station. It is a direct to Melbourne CBD within 15 minutes, Melbourne Uni in 20 minutes. Monash Uni is 2 stops away and only 4 minutes to Chadstone Shopping Centre. So you're an average median house suburb of about 2 million Australian dollars, but entry price for this apartment is about 500,000 Australian dollars. So I've generally shared just now the median price for apartments in Melbourne is always between about 600,000 Australian dollars. So this one is about there, it's about 500,000 Australian dollars. So you can enter into this for high value, good yields right next to the station, and it's not so clamped as you're in the CBD as well. You can be in the suburbs, still enjoying the suburban lifestyle. Next, please. So this is just a video that we are just going to share with you of this Murrumbeena Place. As you can see here, before the video starts, that is the station. That grating on the bottom right is the station, and you're just right next to the station. That is what makes it a great rentable product. You can start playing now. Thank you. All right, that almost sums up the presentation. But for those who need a buying process in Australia, I'll just share with you briefly. Of course, you select the property, what you want to buy, but always speak to your solicitor, your conveyancer first. Understand the bylaws, understand the cost of purchase. And in Australia, for foreigners, you have your FIRB application, which is called the Foreign Investors Review Board. And of course, you have the stamp duty, which you have a stamp duty holiday now. You can speak to the local representative for your Benham salesperson to have your stamp duty calculator done up for you with the stamp duty discounts or holiday that is you're having now. Once you've done all that, you can sign your contract and ultimately pay a 10% deposit. In Australia, it's 1090, so you only pay 10% down and nothing until completion. And then, of course, you hold it until completion, and then you collect your keys, and then you monetize it. You can have defects inspection before the property is completed, that you can speak to us or your local property agent or your lettings agent there as well. So it's pretty seamless. You have bought a property in UK, in Australia, it's the same. Yeah. Next, please. So I think that ends the presentation for myself. Excuse me. But now we have some questions. I'm sure Shireen has selected very, very difficult ones for me to answer. But I hope I can answer all your questions within this limited time period.
Thank you so much for sharing, Marvin. Yes, we do actually have a couple of questions that came in before the webinar, as well as I'm seeing some question popping up on our chat box. Any live audience, if you want any question to be answered, please kindly fill in the Q&A box. We will get Melvin to reply as much as we could. But first of all, I have some question from here. Can foreign passport holder buy land or landed property?
You can buy landed property, but in terms of land, I think you still need a special, depends on how big the land you want to buy, right? You want to say you buy the entire half of Perth, then that will be a national security thing. But landed property, yes. So if you buy the land, probably an acre, 2 acres, and if you want to build your own home, yes, but it has to be brand new. It cannot be subsale. That means you have to buy something brand new, develop, you are the first owner, then yes.
Thank you, Marvin. How about foreigner? Can they buy second-hand property?
Yeah, no, they can't.
Strictly no, huh?
Yeah.
And if a foreigner, they need mortgage, can they apply a mortgage in Australia?
Yeah, there are selected banks that loan for, I think for Thailand, you have CIMB Thailand, you have UOB Thailand that loans on it. Similarly, in Singapore, OCBC, UOB, Malaysia, most of our banks loan, Maybank, OCBC, CIMB. Indonesia, I think we have CIMB Indonesia, Maybank Indonesia. So if you have your premium or private wealth bankers there, you can speak to them.
And how about the resale market? What are you seeing?
The resale market, like I said just now, the auction rates are at about 50%. It's not great, as in the great times were at 80%, where everyone is snatching and bidding and overbidding or counter bidding. But for those, I think the person who asked this question probably wants to know how will they exit as a first-time buyer. Like I said earlier, so for exiting in Melbourne or particularly in Australia is that you put it in the auction market. There they call it auction. It's not like a bank auction in UK or Malaysia where you can't service your loan, then the bank repossess your property, then the bank auctions it off. No, they call it an auction. What you do is you probably engage an agent. They will come. They'll probably stage the property nicely. You can rent it. Of course, you have to pay for it for the staging. So they'll have an open day. You come in, you walk, you see. Then that is when the auction day happens. Then everyone will come. Those who have viewed the property will come on the day. That's when the bidding starts. Of course, you tell the auction agent your reserve price. That means your minimum price you want to achieve in order to affect the sale. Once that's achieved, and then if they try to keep on pushing it up, so they will usually say we have achieved X amount above reserve price. So that's good news for you. If you can achieve X amount above reserve price, that means you have made a handsome profit. So that's how you exit in the secondary market for Melbourne or Australia.
I see. I have a live question from one of the audience.
Sure.
Would I use my lawyer in UK to make the purchase?
I think solicitors are country-based or in Australia is state-based. In Australia, they have state premiers. They are a bit like half like US, half like UK. So if you say you have a Victorian premier, a Victorian premier means a Victorian prime minister. They don't have like in UK a prime minister for the entire UK, right? So you Australian solicitors are state-based. That means if you buy a property in Melbourne, you have to engage a Victorian solicitor unless he has a practice in New South Wales or Queensland or Western Australia. Then you can use that same lawyer, if you get what I mean. But
Thank
if he
you.
only has a practice in Victoria, then you have to use a Victorian solicitor. So unless your UK solicitors have a practice in Victoria or Melbourne, then yes, you can use them. But if they don't, then I don't think so you can use them.
Understand. And of course, on that note, we will also have some kind of recommended solicitor that they can choose from.
Sure.
Last question. Will local prefer living in a landed home or an apartment?
I think that's very subjective, right? If you have the means, if you have the cash, of course, I think they would still love to live in a property, a landed home, a beautiful landed home. But like I said, the cost of living, everything has gone up. So young families these days are moving towards apartment living. Apartment living has never been that popular among Australians, truth be told, unlike other cities. It's still a landed culture. But again, X amount of years has passed since then. So you're seeing a new generation of property owners who have changed their lifestyle, who have changed their look on property ownership. So you will see that apartments these days have become more popular as well among the younger generation, compared to probably 2008 when we were doing a lot of Australian properties back then. Yeah. So I would say it is it's up to that person's situation. But of course, if you're asking me what is a better buy, if you're looking at a long-term view, between Kingsville, Murrumbeena, I would personally look at the townhouse. That is nice, and it has land, it has its appeal. So I think for a long-term view, you rarely can go wrong on that one. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I guess thank you so much for sharing all your insight, and it's very comprehensive and insightful. So any audience which if you like more questions to be answered, please approach our local Benham sales team. We will have all the questions answered on your behalf. Anyway, thanks for tonight again. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. See you soon. Bye-bye.